On the day of my wedding with my husband, a Taoist nun barged in. "Bride, let this poor Taoist have a look at your blessed features." The moment that hand touched the edge of the bridal veil, "Husband, I am scared." My voice was panicked with a slight tremble. I leaned to my side naturally, my right hand grabbing Li Jingshuan's wrist. At that very instant, the Taoist nun's fingertip, tipped with a spot of crimson cinnabar, landed squarely on Li Jingshuan's open palm. Sizzle, a faint burning sound. Time seemed to freeze. The smug smile on the Taoist nun's face froze, her pupils shrinking abruptly. Li Jingshuan lowered his head in confusion, seeing a strange pattern rapidly forming on his palm. 3 intersecting lines ran through the mounts of his palm. Li Jingshuan finally snapped out of it, yanking his hand back, but the red had already seeped into his skin. The entire hall fell silent. The guests' outstretched necks froze mid-air, the festive music having stopped at some point. "What is this?" Marquise's wife, Madame Wang, staggered to her feet, her face pale as paper. "The heavens doom solitary lines." The fortune teller once said, when these lines appear on a woman's palm, she dooms her husband when they appear on a man's palm. He'll ruin the family fortune and end the bloodline. The last 4 words were shrill as a crow's cry. "No!" the Taoist nun screamed, lunging forward to grab Li Jingshuan's wrist. "Wrong, it went wrong," hearing this shrill scream. I felt utterly delighted inside. In my past life, I was trapped by a cursed palm line that foretold I would kill my husband and die without heirs. I endured humiliation in the Marquise's manor for 15 years, only to finally discover it was a poisonous scheme set up by my husband and his mistress. A Taoist nun, they had both a son and daughter outside, while I exhausted my dowry and poured out my heart, all to fulfill their true love. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to my wedding day, when that fate-deciding cinnabar was about to be dotted once more, this time without hesitation. I grabbed my husband's hand and let that ill-fated Lone Star Mark brand deeply into his palm. Since the Marquise's manor believes so firmly in fate, then let this young lord personally bear the curse of family ruin and betrayal by all. The ceremony is complete. I came to my senses amidst the master of ceremonies' rhythmic voice, realizing I had undergone rebirth. In my past life, on my wedding day, a drop of cinnabar fell, and the ill-fated Lone Star Mark was dotted between my brows. The Taoist priest said I was a star of ill fate, destined to kill my husband and ruin the family. I became the laughingstock of all Chang'an. From then on, the Marquise's heir Li Jingshuan treated me like filth, and my mother-in-law cursed me as a jinx. I swallowed my anger for 15 years, only to finally discover that the curse was nothing but a scheme by Li Jingshuan's mistress, the Taoist Nun Qingguo. That despicable couple already had a son and a daughter. The son was given to me to raise, so he could inherit the title, while the daughter was pampered outside, doted upon at their knees. Like a fool, I emptied my dowry to maintain the Marquise's manor's splendor, exhausted my heart and soul raising someone else's child. Until that snowy night in the plum garden, I heard Li Jingshuan say to Qingguo, "That bit of cinnabar, if I had wanted to remove it back then, I would have done so long ago. But what is she? Is she even worthy of competing with you?" Consumed by rage, I burned all 4 of their family to death, and was executed myself. Fortunately, the emperor took pity on my plight and allowed me to divorce before my death. From then on, I was no longer a woman of the Lai family, just a daughter of the Shen family. At the moment of my death, I thought, if there is a next life, bride, let this humble Taoist see your blessed visage. Here it comes, beneath the bridal veil. I saw a pair of cloud-patterned brocade boots stop before me. In my previous life, I was so nervous my whole body went stiff, letting that slightly cool hand lift my veil, letting that index finger with its eerie fragrance press toward the center of my brow. In this life, the moment that hand touched the edge of the veil, "Husband," my voice trembled slightly, "your wife is scared." I naturally leaned against Li Jingshuan, my right hand grabbing his wrist with perfect ease. He was enjoying everyone's envy, having married the legitimate daughter of the Shen family, the wealthiest in Chang'an. Her dowry was enough to support the Marquise's household for 3 generations. In that very instant, Qingguo's fingertip, carrying a dot of scarlet cinnabar, landed squarely on Li Jingshuan's open left palm. Sizzle, a faint burning sound. Time seemed to freeze. The smug smile on Qingguo's face froze, her pupils contracting sharply. Li Jingshuan lowered his head in bewilderment, seeing a mass of crimson patterns rapidly spreading across his palm, instantly forming 3 intersecting eerie symbols. Ah! Li Jingshuan finally snapped back to his senses, yanking his hand away, but the red had already seeped into his flesh. The entire hall fell silent. The guests' outstretched necks froze in midair, the festive music having stopped at some point. "What is this, Madame Wang?" The Marquise's wife staggered to her feet, her face pale as paper, the heaven's bane solitary mark. The fortune teller once said, "When this mark appears on a woman's palm, it kills her husband. When it appears on a man's palm, it ruins the entire family fortune and cuts off the bloodline." The last 4 words were shrill as a crow's cry. "No," Qingguo screamed, lunging forward to grab Li Jingshuan's wrist. "Wrong. It went wrong. This fate-sealing cinnabar can only be applied to a woman's brow. A man's yang energy clashes with it. This mark will." "Will what?" I lifted my bridal veil, revealing that clean and delicate face. "No cinnabar, and no curse." Qingguo whipped her head toward me, her gaze shifting from shock to venomous hatred. "You set me up? What is the Taoist priestess talking about?" I stepped back half a pace. This humble wife was just frightened and leaned closer to my husband. When the priestess suddenly reached over, I was startled too. I turned to Li Jingshuan, tears falling on command. "Husband, your hand." Li Jingshuan stared fixedly at his palm. The red patterns were changing. Blood droplets began seeping from the edges, accompanied by a burning, stinging pain. He raised his head to look at Qingguo, his gaze shifting from confusion to shock, finally solidifying into fury. "Qingguo, what have you done to me?" "I wasn't trying to harm you." Qingguo frantically reached for the brocade pouch at her waist. "I have medicine to ease it, but once this pattern is planted on a man, my heart's blood mixed with 9 precious medicines must be applied externally and taken internally every month. Otherwise, the festering from the palm will spread throughout the entire body. And in the end, what? In the end, flesh will rot away completely, bones and sinews exposed. Death within 3 years." Qingguo's voice dropped low. With a thud, the Marchioness fainted to the ground. The wedding hall descended into complete chaos. I stood quietly amid the chaos, watching Li Jingshuan's deathly pale face, watching Qingguo's panicked expression. A real pain came from my palm. It was the bloody marks I'd dug into myself. I had won the first step of my gamble. The next morning, I woke up in the side chamber. Last night, the Marquise's household was thrown into utter chaos. The first thing the Marchioness did after waking was kick me out of the bridal chamber. This jinx just walked through the door and already caused my son such calamity. Get to the West Wing. Exactly what I wanted. I directed my 4 dowry maids to pack up the trunks. The maids' eyes were red-rimmed, and the head servant Nanny Zhang was gnashing her teeth. "Miss, the Lai family is too much. That Taoist nun was clearly targeting you. The young master threw himself at her, and they blame it on you." "Nanny, watch your words." I combed my long hair in front of the bronze mirror. The person in the mirror had delicate features, jade-like skin, without a single flaw. Now that I've married into the Lai family, I am a Lai family wife. My husband has met with misfortune, so I should naturally serve him wholeheartedly. Nanny Zhang was stunned. "Nanny," I turned and took the old nanny's hand. "From today onwards, unless I personally give the word, no one in the Lai family may touch a single cent of my dowry. If they ask, just say I was so frightened that I fell ill, and the keys can't be found." Nanny Zhang's eyes lit up. "Young miss is right. Why should we use our money to feed these ungrateful wolves?" Also, I looked out the window. "Tell my eldest brother about today's events, and ask him to secretly look into Qingguo's background. In my previous life, it wasn't until my death that I learned Qingguo was no ordinary Taoist nun. The Xuanzhen Temple appeared to be a place of spiritual cultivation on the surface, but was actually a base for a secret intelligence network in the capital. The love between Qingguo and Li Jingshuan had been tainted with too many calculated interests from the very beginning. In this life, I would expose this hidden card ahead of time. After giving my instructions, I changed into plain clothes and carried the medicinal soup toward the main courtyard. After all, if you are putting on an act, you might as well go all the way. The main courtyard was already shrouded in gloom and misery. Li Jingshuan lay on the bed, his left hand wrapped in thick bandages, with blood faintly seeping through. His complexion was ashen, with dark circles under his eyes. He seemed to have aged 10 years overnight. Madame Hao, Lady Wang, sat by the bedside wiping her tears, while my two sisters-in-law, Li Xinru and Li Xinlian, stood to the side glaring at me with venomous eyes. "You still have the nerve to come here," Li Xinru shrieked. "If brother hadn't married you, this jinx, how could he have?" "Xinru," Lady Wang silenced her daughter, yet her gaze toward me was equally cold. "What are you here for? Haven't you harmed Jingshuan enough?" I set down the medicine bowl and curtsied. "Mother, your daughter-in-law has come to bring medicine to my husband. Regarding last night's incident, I do bear responsibility for failing to warn my husband in time to dodge that strike from the Taoist." Li Jingshuan suddenly opened his eyes. "Where is Qingguo?" "That Taoist nun," Lady Wang said resentfully. "She left a bottle of ointment last night and ran off, saying she'd come deliver medicine on the 15th of every month. My son, the dignified heir of the Marquis Manor, actually has to be controlled by a Taoist nun." "Mother," Li Jingshuan said anxiously, "without her medicine, my hand would be crippled." Dead silence filled the room. I lowered my gaze, hiding the mockery in my eyes. In my previous life, Li Jingshuan had been so proud, yet now to save himself, he had no choice but to admit he was at someone else's mercy. How satisfying. "Husband," I spoke softly. "Since the Taoist said she has medicine, she surely won't break her word. The priority now is to recover your health. Also, there were many guests last night. I am afraid the matter of the Tianxia solitary mark has already spread. The Marquis Manor needs to plan ahead." These words struck Lady Wang's most sensitive nerve. The Marquis Manor was already in decline, relying solely on ancestral titles and the wealth from the marriage alliance with the Shen family to keep up appearances. Now that an ominous pattern, destined to ruin the family fortune, had appeared on the young master's palm, once word got out, who would still be willing to associate with the Marquis Manor? Li Jingshuan's official career was completely finished. What superior would dare employ a subordinate whose fate carried such malevolent signs? "It is all because of you. It is all because of you." Madame Wang suddenly lunged at me, her nails nearly stabbing into my face. "Shen, if you have even half a conscience, you should go beg that Taoist nun to transfer the pattern back onto yourself." I stepped back to dodge her, my voice still calm. "Mother," the Taoist said last night, "that once this pattern is implanted, it cannot be transferred. Besides, your daughter-in-law has no ominous pattern on her palm. Even if the Taoist wanted to mark one, there would be nowhere to mark." I spread open both hands, 10 slender fingers, palm lines clear and gentle. Madame Wang trembled all over with rage. Just then, the steward's panicked voice came from outside the door. "Madam, young master, this is terrible. The household of Vice Minister Liu from the Ministry of Revenue and the household of Lord Zhao from the Ministry of Works have both returned our visiting cards, saying something urgent suddenly came up at home. Also, the silk shop in the east of the city says the goods we ordered must be paid in full up front. They won't extend credit anymore. The tenant farmers at the western suburb estate are causing trouble, saying this year's harvest was poor and demanding a 50% rent reduction." Bad news came one after another. Li Jingshuan abruptly sat up. His vision went black and he fell back down again, the blood stain on the gauze growing darker. I quietly watched all of this. In my past life, all this pressure eventually fell on my head. I used my own dowry to fill the deficit, used my own face to negotiate everywhere, and ended up as a joke paying into my husband's family, only to be despised. This life, she only needed to wait quietly. Wait until the Marquis Manor was at the end of its rope, with nowhere to turn, and had no choice but to come begging before her. Over the next half-month, the Marquis manor declined at an alarming speed. The festering in Li Jingxuan's palm grew worse by the day. The ointment Qingguo left behind could barely contain the spread. Yet that rotting stench grew stronger and stronger. He didn't dare go out, didn't dare receive guests, hiding in his room all day. His temper grew increasingly violent, and who knows how many medicine bowls he'd smashed. Madame Wang sought doctors and medicine everywhere, inviting wave after wave of monks and Taoist priests. Silver flowed out like water, yet nothing worked. The cash on the Marquis Manor's books quickly ran dry, and she set her sights on my dowry. The young madam is ill and cannot receive visitors. Nanny Jiang blocked the west wing doorway, her back ramrod straight. Keys, this old servant doesn't know. The dowry is the young madam's private property, if Madame Marquis has urgent need. Why not wait until the young madam recovers and come speak to her personally? Madame Wang hit walls several times, seething with hatred, yet could do nothing about it. Although the Shen family came from merchant origins, they were imperial merchants. My eldest brother Shen Jinji was even this year's newly appointed Tanhua, already admitted to the Hanlin Academy. If they really tore off all pretenses, the Marquis manor wouldn't gain any advantage. Miss Dongshu, the dowry maid, reported in a hushed voice. As per your instructions, my brother watched Xuanzhen Temple for half a month. That Taoist priest Qingguo goes down the mountain late at night every 3 days, heading to Qingguo Manor in the west of the city. A pair of dragon phoenix twins live there, about 4 years old, and they call Qingguo Mother. I was embroidering a handkerchief, and my needle paused for a moment. The children's father, haven't found out yet, but the manor has many servants, and they spend lavishly, not something an ordinary Taoist temple could support. Dongshu lowered her voice. Also, there are problems with Xuanzhen Temple's incense money accounts. On the surface, it is an ordinary temple, but in reality, large sums of silver are transported out through a secret passage behind the mountain every month, destination unknown. A cold arc curled at the corner of my lips. Xuanzhen Temple, Qingguo Manor, Li Jingxuan, the sudden distancing from the Ministry of Revenue and Ministry of Works. These fragments had no connection in my previous life, but now strung together, they gradually revealed a startling outline. Have my eldest brother continue investigating, but he must be careful. The waters behind Xuanzhen Temple are probably deeper than we think. Yes, I pushed open the window. Autumn was deepening, and the chrysanthemums in the Marquis Manor's garden had bloomed, yet no one came to admire them. In her previous life, she loved these flowers dearly and tended to them personally. Yet she was always mocked for being vulgar, only knowing how to fuss over flowers and plants. Looking back now, her mistake was taking the Marquis Manor too seriously, taking herself too seriously as a member of the Lai family. Young madam, a timid voice came from outside the door. It was Xiao Xing, a rough workmaid of the Marquis Manor. The old madam requests your presence in the front hall. There are guests. I raised an eyebrow. Madame Wang took the initiative to find her. Seems she couldn't hold out anymore. In the front hall, Madame Wang was accompanying a richly dressed woman in conversation. A stiff smile plastered on her face. I recognized that woman, Madame Wang's bosom friend, who in my past life had mocked her openly and behind her back countless times. Young Shu is here. Madame Wang waved warmly for once. Come greet your Aunt Zhou. Madame Zhou looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my clean face for a moment, then smiled. Indeed a fine appearance. But I heard Jingxuan's hand isn't doing well. Thank you for your concern. Auntie, my husband is recuperating. I lowered my eyes. Recuperating is one thing, but this manor's expenses can't stop. Madame Zhou picked up her teacup unhurriedly. I heard your silk shop's goods were seized. What a coincidence. My maiden family's nephew manages canal transport at the Ministry of Revenue. Just a word from him would do. As for those tenant farmers at the western suburb estate, I know people in the 5 wards patrol office. Send a few soldiers to intimidate them a bit, and they'll naturally behave. Madame Wang's eyes lit up. That would be wonderful. It is just the bribes. We're family. Why talk about bribes? Madame Zhou waved her hand dismissively, then changed the subject. But actually, I came today about Shinru's marriage. Li Shinru, the legitimate eldest daughter of the Marquis Manor, was 16 this year. The perfect age for marriage discussions. You know, our third son is 20 this year. Serving as an imperial guard, his future is limitless. Madame Zhou smiled. If our two families could become even closer through marriage. I listened quietly. In my previous life, Madame Zhou had also proposed this marriage, but demanded a huge dowry. Madame Wang couldn't bear to part with it, and it eventually came to nothing. Li Shinru was delayed until 19, and could only marry a wealthy merchant in his 50s as a second wife. Now the Marquis Manor's situation is even worse. Yet Madame Zhou still dares to propose marriage. She must have ulterior motives. Auntie's kindness is Shinru's blessing. Madame Wang was indeed tempted. It is just the betrothal gifts and dowry. The betrothal gifts naturally won't be lacking. As for the dowry, Madame Zhou looked at me, her smile deepening. I heard that when Yunshu married in, she brought a red coral piece half a person's height. That is quite a rare treasure, if it could help Shinru make a grand showing. So this is what she was after. I raised my eyes, meeting Madame Zhou's calculating gaze, and smiled lightly. Is Auntie referring to that phoenix greeting the Sunday coral? It was indeed obtained by my grandfather from the South Sea back then, worth a fortune. Madame Wang's breathing quickened. However, Shen Yunshu changed the subject. I've already promised to gift that coral to Princess Yongning. The princess's birthday is next month, and she specifically requested this auspicious item. Surely Auntie wouldn't want to compete with the princess. Madame Zhou's smile froze. Princess Yongning, the current emperor's full-blooded elder sister, most favored by His Majesty. Who would dare compete with her for anything? Is that so? Mrs. Zhou laughed dryly. What a pity, then. I lifted the teacup, hiding the cold smirk at the corner of my lips. The coral was indeed meant for the princess, but it was a door-opening gift I offered on my own initiative. In my previous life, only at the moment of death did I understand that in the power arena of the capital, wealth is certainly important, but connections and backing are even more so. The Shen family has money, but no power. The Marquise's household has a title, but no money. The union of both should have been complementary. Yet due to the Lai family's short-sightedness and greed, it became one side exploiting the other. In this life, I will build my own network of connections. And the first step starts with Princess Yongning. The 15th of the 9th month, the night of the full moon, Qingguo arrived as promised. But not alone. Behind her followed an old woman in black, carrying a cold iron medicine chest, her gaze sinister like a night owl. Li Jingxuan had already been waiting in the room for a long time. The pus and blood seeping through the bandage on his left hand had soaked through his sleeve, the stench of rot filling the entire room. His eyes were blood red, bursting with intense hatred and longing when he saw Qingguo. Hating her for ruining him, yet craving the medicine in her hands. This is the life-prolonging ointment, refined using my heart's blood as the primer, supplemented with Snow Mountain Lingjie, century-old fleeceflower root, and 6 other precious herbs. Qingguo opened the medicine chest expressionlessly, taking out a white jade box. Apply externally on the 15th of each month. It can suppress the festering for 1 month. The essence-restoring pill for internal use is here. Between her fingertips, she held a scarlet pill. How am I supposed to trust you? Li Jingxuan rasped. What if this medicine is poisonous? You don't have to take it, Qingguo sneered coldly. Then just wait for the rot to reach your heart and become a rotting corpse in 3 years. Madame Wang was so anxious, she kept stomping her feet beside them. Xuaner, take it quickly. Li Jingxuan glared fixedly at Qingguo. Moonlight shone through the window lattice onto her face. That countenance that once made him infatuated now looked somewhat hideous. He suddenly remembered the wedding night. The cinnabar on Qingguo's fingertip was originally meant for Shen Yunshu. If Shen Yunshu had been the one marked back then it would be that woman suffering now. Qingguo, his voice softened, pleading. Since you have medicine, can't you completely lift this curse? I'll give you whatever you want. Gold, silver, jewels, land deeds, property titles. It can't be lifted. Chingro cut him off. Once the fate-locking cinnabar is wrongly planted between yin and yang, there is no solution unless... Unless what? Chingro's eyes flickered. Unless you find the legendary life exchanger, trading one life for another. But such a figure only exists in Jianghu legends. The light in Li Jingshuan's eyes died. He numbly swallowed the pill, letting the old woman change his dressings. When the new ointment was applied, the burning pain indeed lessened, and the pus and blood gradually stopped. He let out a long breath, as if he had crawled back from the edge of hell. I'll come again on the 15th of next month. Chingro packed up her medicine box and turned to leave. Wait, Li Jingshuan stopped her, his eyes complicated. Chingro Manor, are the children doing well? Qingyue's back stiffened. You found out? If you don't want people to know, don't do it in the first place. Li Jingshuan smiled bitterly. Chingro, since you wanted to be with me, why wouldn't you marry me back then? If you had become the Marquis Manor heir's wife, why resort to such methods? Marry you. Chingro turned around abruptly, mockery flashing in her eyes. And then, like Shen Yunshu, be trapped in this square courtyard, serving in laws, managing household affairs. Watching you take concubines and bed servants, Li Jingshuan. What I want is you as a person, not the title of Marquis Manor heir's wife. But you ruined me, Li Jingshuan roared. My life is over, career, reputation, everything is gone. That is why I come every month to bring you medicine. Qingyue also raised her voice. Li Jingshuan, we're even? You wronged me first by marrying another woman. I accidentally hurt you, but I kept you alive. From now on, you walk your broad road, and I'll cross my narrow bridge. And then have my son call someone else father. Li Jingshuan sneered. Chingro, you've played your cards well. Have me be a cripple in the Marquis Manor while you live freely outside with our children. When I die, the Marquis Manor's title and family fortune will naturally fall into your son's hands. Isn't that right? The air froze. Madame Wang gasped. What son, Jingshuan? What are you talking about? Chingro's face turned deathly pale, her fingers trembling slightly. Outside the window, Ai Shu stood quietly in the shadows. Dongshu silently handed me a note with information eldest brother had just found. The birth dates of Qingro's boy-girl twins matched perfectly with the time Li Jingshuan left the capital to travel and study 5 years ago. 5 years. So it was that early, in my previous life. Li Jingshuan refused to touch me because of the curse, and adopted a distant relative's child for me to raise. In reality, he had long since had both a son and a daughter. Her nails dug into her palm again. The pain kept her alert. Inside the room, the confrontation continued. So what if it is true? Qingro finally tore off her mask, her eyes devoid of any tenderness. Li Jingshuan, back then, you said you'd marry no one but me, yet you turned around and followed your family's arrangement to marry the Shen girl. I, Qingro, am not a puppet to be toyed with. You wronged me, so I'll make you pay. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to barely a whisper, yet every word struck like a blade. This fate-binding cinnabar truly has no cure, but with monthly doses you'll forever be under my control. I want you alive, living in agony, living in humiliation, forever remembering what fate awaits those who betray me. With that, she swept her sleeves and left. Li Jingshuan slumped on the bed, his face ashen as death. Madame Wang was completely dumbfounded, and only after a long while did she ask in a trembling voice, Jingshuan, is what she said true? You have children outside. What answered her was Li Jingshuan's hysterical roar. Get out. All of you. Get out. I turned and left. Tonight's harvest was plentiful. Qingro and Li Jingshuan had completely torn off all pretenses. The Marquis Manor's biggest secret was exposed, and she herself still stood cleanly outside the situation. Returning to the West Wing, Nanny Jiang came up to greet her and said in a low voice, Miss, someone came from the Grand Princess's manor. They said the quarrel has been received. The princess is very pleased and invites you to visit the manor the day after tomorrow to admire chrysanthemums. I nodded, walked to the writing desk, picked up a brush, and wrote a letter. Have eldest brother continue investigating 3 matters. First, which court officials have connections with Xuanzhen Temple. Second, the source of daily expenses for Qingro Villa. She paused. Third, investigate who Li Jingxuan came into contact with during his travels 5 years ago, especially those connected to the border regions. In her previous life, she had heard Li Jingxuan let slip a few words while drunk, seemingly related to border smuggling. If that were true, it would be a grave crime, punishable by confiscation of property and execution of the entire clan. She had to grasp this blade. At the most opportune moment, sever all of this with her own hands. Grand Princess Yongning's chrysanthemum viewing banquet became the liveliest elegant gathering in Chang'an City this autumn. The chrysanthemums in the princess's manor back garden truly lived up to their reputation. I wore a lotus pink roof skirt with broken branch plum blossom patterns, with only a white jade bell hairpin in my hair. As soon as I appeared, I attracted numerous gazes. The matter of the Lai family's young master, having the Tianxia Lone Star line on his palm, had long spread throughout the capital, and everyone wanted to see this unlucky bride. So you are Yunshu from the Shen family. Princess Yongning sat in the main seat of the pavilion, around 40 years old, with dignified features but sharp eyes. Come here and let me have a look. I stepped forward as instructed, my curtsy impeccable. The princess studied me for a moment, then suddenly smiled. A presentable child indeed. I quite like that coral. Your father was thoughtful. My father often says treasures should belong to their true masters. Your Highness is of imperial blood. Your benevolence blesses the people. It is the coral's fortune to enter the princess's residence. My voice was soft, yet every word was clear, nicely said. The princess's smile deepened as she gestured for me to sit at the lower seat. I've heard that you helped manage the family business even while in the inner chambers. I only know a little. I wouldn't dare call it managing. Shen Yunshu lowered her eyes. It is just that my father believes women should also understand some matters of commerce, lest they be deceived when managing a household in the future. Well said, the princess nodded. If a woman has no skills of her own, she can only be at others' mercy. Those words carried a deeper meaning. Halfway through admiring the chrysanthemums, the princess suddenly said, Yunshu, walk with me. Everyone knew this meant she wanted to speak privately, and tactfully stayed where they were. Deep within the princess's residence's chrysanthemum garden lay a small pond, its banks planted with chrysanthemums of every color, reflected in the water like a fairyland. The princess dismissed her attendants, leaving only a trusted nanny by her side. The matters of the Lai family, I have heard some of it. The Grand Princess spoke directly. That Taoist nun, is she from Xuanzhen Temple? My heart skipped a beat, but my expression remained calm. Yes, her Taoist name is Qingro. The Grand Princess let out a cold snort. Xuanzhen Temple has become increasingly outrageous over the years. Pretending to cultivate purity on the surface, who knows how many dirty deeds they've done in secret. I cautiously refrained from responding. You needn't be nervous. The Grand Princess glanced at her. I summoned you today, first to thank you for the gift of the treasure, second to give you a word of advice. Behind Xuanzhen Temple, the connections run deep. If the Lai family's troubles are merely domestic unrest, that is one thing, but if it involves matters that shouldn't be involved, it would be wise to withdraw early. These words were almost laid bare. I took a deep breath and knelt to pay respects. Your Highness's teachings, Yunshu will remember. It is just that since Yunshu has married into the Lai family, I am a woman of the Lai family sharing in both glory and ruin. Some things are beyond my control. What a fine, beyond my control. The Grand Princess helped her up, a flash of appreciation in her eyes. But from what I see, you are not the type to let others slaughter you at will. Remember today's promise. If that day truly comes, bring this jade pendant to the princess's residence. She handed over a mutton-fat jade pendant, carved with phoenix patterns on the front, and a small character, Ning, on the back. This was a promise of protection. I solemnly accepted it, my eyes slightly warm with emotion. Thank you, Your Highness. Don't be so quick to thank me. The Grand Princess gazed into the distance, her voice growing cold. This princess has her own selfish reasons for helping you. Xuanzhen Temple has overreached. It is time they were taught a lesson. On the carriage back to the marquise's residence, I clutched that jade pendant, my heart surging with turbulent emotions. The Grand Princess's attitude confirmed her suspicions. Xuanzhen Temple was far more than just a Taoist temple. It was a vast hidden network. The relationship between Qingguo and Li Jingxuan was probably not as simple as a mere romantic affair either. "Miss," Nanny Zhang said in a low voice, "someone from the residence just sent word. They said the young master has found some leads and wants you to look them over carefully when you return." I unfolded the note. There was only a single line of small characters. Xuanzhen Temple has financial dealings with the northern border. The handler is suspected to be Xiao Wenkang, director of the Bureau of Operations in the Ministry of War. Additionally, the daily expenses of Qingguo Manor come from Yangsheng Bank in the eastern city. The bank owner has marriage ties to the Vice Minister of Revenue. Silver, the Ministry of War, the Ministry of Revenue, the northern border. These words combined pointed to a terrifying possibility: smuggling military weapons or colluding with the enemy. My fingertips went cold. In her previous life, though the Lai family had fallen, they had never been implicated in such grave crimes. Was this a variable brought about by her rebirth, or had these things always existed, and she had simply been oblivious in her past life? "Nanny," she put away the note, her voice calm, "tell my eldest brother to pause the investigation. Everything waits for my signal." "Miss, the waters are too deep." I gazed out the carriage window. Chang'an's streets were as bustling as ever, yet she saw bleached bones beneath the undercurrents. "We need to wait for the most critical moment. Wait until Li Jingxuan and Qingguo expose their own weaknesses. Wait until the marquise's manor is completely backed into a corner, with no choice but to take desperate risks." And she only needed to give a gentle push at the right moment. In October, the first snow fell on Chang'an. The marquise's manor's decline could no longer be concealed. Creditors came knocking daily, farmlands and shops defected one after another, and 3 or 4 out of 10 servants fled after stealing and pawning off household items. Lady Wang sold off her own dowry jewelry, but it was still a drop in the bucket. The festering on Li Jingxuan's left hand had spread to his forearm. Even with Qingguo's medicine every month, it could only barely be kept in check. He became gloomy and irritable, drinking heavily all day. When sober, he would stare at the red marks on his palm, his eyes crazed. The only good news was that Qingguo began adding a new ingredient to her medicine, supposedly a snow spirit lotus sourced from the western regions, capable of slowing the festering. But the price was that Li Jingxuan became dependent on this medicine. Without it, the pain was unbearable. "She is controlling me." Li Jingxuan curled up on the bed, cold sweat soaking through his inner garments. "Qingguo, she wants to turn me into a dog." Lady Wang held him and wept. "My son, let's think of another way. The Shen woman." "Lady Shen." Li Jingxuan suddenly raised his head, his eyes covered in red veins. "Right, Lady Shen. Doesn't she have money? Make her hand it over. She is a woman of the Lai family. Her dowry belongs to the Lai family. But she won't budge. Then force her to." Li Jingxuan hissed, "Go tell her, if she still won't hand over her dowry, I'll divorce her. A daughter of the Shen family being cast aside. Let's see what face she'll have left to stand in the capital." Madame Wang hesitated. "But the Shen family now. What about the Shen family? Just merchants." Li Jingxuan struggled to get out of bed. "I am the heir of the Marquis Manor. Once she married in, alive she is a Lai family person. Dead, she is a Lai family ghost. Her things naturally all belong to the Lai family." Madame Wang looked at her son's festering hand and gritted her teeth. "Fine, mother will go right now." When Madame Wang burst in, I was looking at my account books. Over the past few months, through my connections with the Grand Princess, I had secretly acquired 2 silk fabric shops and a tea mountain with quite profitable returns. The family can barely keep the pot boiling, and since you are a woman of the Lai family, you should share the hardship. Hand over the keys to your dowry." Madame Wang said bluntly. I closed the account book and looked up. How much does mother want? Madame Wang was stunned, not expecting me to be so straightforward. First take 50,000 taels for emergencies. 50,000 taels. I repeated, letting out a soft laugh. Does mother know that my dowry in cash is only 80,000 taels in total? You want to take more than half at once, if the manor has urgent needs in the future. What should we do then? Then it is none of your concern. Mrs. Wang braced herself. Hand it over. I stood up, walked to the dressing table, opened a mother-of-pearl box, and took out a ring of keys. Wild joy flashed in Mrs. Wang's eyes as she reached out to grab them. I can give you the keys. I withdrew my hand, but there is a condition. Name it. I want the authority to manage the household. My voice was calm. All the estates, shops, and servants of the Marquis Manor, their management rights shall be handed over to me. Mother is getting on in years. It is time to enjoy some peace and comfort. Mrs. Wang's expression changed. You want to seize power. It is not seizing power. It is sharing the burden. I looked her straight in the eye. Mother, you know better than I what state the Marquis Manor is in now. If we let things continue, within 3 months, the title and mansion will likely be forfeited to pay debts. As a daughter-in-law of the Lai family, I don't want to see such an ending. Let me manage things, and perhaps there is still a glimmer of hope. These words were half true, half false. She did want to take control, but not to save the Marquis Manor, rather, to completely control the situation and gather evidence. Mrs. Wang hesitated. Of course she was reluctant to give up power, but she truly couldn't handle the mess before her. Can you really save the Marquis Manor? I'll do my best. Shen Yunshu said lightly, but if mother doesn't trust me, then forget it. The dowry keys are here, just take them. It is just that once they're spent, the next time you need more, Yunshu will be powerless to help. I placed the keys on the table. Mrs. Wang stared at that ring of keys, then looked at my face, torn in inner turmoil. In the end, her fear of reality overpowered her greed for power. Fine. Madame Wang gritted her teeth. I agree. But you must sign a written agreement. If you can't turn things around within half a year, you'll automatically return the authority, and all your dowry will go into the family coffers. Agreed. I said without hesitation. Please also hand over all the account books, land deeds, and servant contracts in the manor. From today on, I am in charge of all affairs inside and outside the Marquis Manor. That afternoon, the handover was completed. I sat in the main seat of the Marquis Manor study. Dust-covered account books piled before me. Nanny Zhang led several accountants who came as part of my dowry to begin auditing. The more they calculated, the worse their expressions became. Miss, the Marquis Manor's external debts have reached a staggering 120,000 taels. The farmlands run deficits every year. Most of the shops are losing money, and the remaining ones have been embezzled by the managers. The accountant's voice trembled. This is nothing but an empty shell. I had expected this, and said calmly. List out all the deficit details, especially the transaction records related to the Ministry of Revenue, and the Ministry of War. Compile those separately. Yes. I then turned to Dongshu. How many usable people are left in the manor? Less than 20 remain, mostly old and weak. Dongshu said in a low voice, but don't worry, miss. The people we brought from the Shen family are more than enough. Good. I stood up and walked to the window. The snow fell heavier and heavier, covering the pavilions and towers of the Marquis Manor in pure white beautiful, yet desolate. Pass on my orders first. All creditors are to come in 3 days. I will personally negotiate with them. Second, send people to all the farmlands and shops. Tell the managers to bring their account books within 3 days. Those who fail to arrive on time will all be charged with embezzlement and handed over to the authorities. Third, I turned around, a cold gleam flashing in my eyes. Go investigate what exactly this snow soul lotus that Qingguo sends every month really is. I suspect it is not some beneficial medicine at all. Mama Zhang was startled. Miss, you mean? Li Jingshuan's dependence on the medicine is too abnormal, I said coldly. Qingguo hates him for being unfaithful. Why would she kindly help him? There must be something fishy about this medicine. 3 days later, the front hall of the Marquis Manor. The creditors filled the room, each one with an unfriendly expression. At the head was Steward Liu of the Vice Minister of Revenue, representing 3 money houses, with debts as high as 50,000 taels. Madam Young Marquis, Steward Liu smiled insincerely. The Marquis Manor has been in arrears for a long time. If you don't give us an explanation today, we'll have to see each other in court. I sat upright in the main seat, my voice clear. Rest assured, everyone, the Marquis Manor's debts will be settled today. I signaled the accountant to present the ledger. This is the detailed list of all the Marquis Manor's current assets, farmlands, shops, residences, antiques, and paintings, valued at approximately 150,000 taels. After deducting the 120,000 taels of debt, there remains 30,000 taels. The creditor's eyes lit up. But I have one condition. I flipped to a certain page in the ledger. 3 years ago, the Marquis Manor borrowed 20,000 taels from Yongsheng Money House to purchase the northern suburb estate. However, according to my investigation, the actual transaction price of the estate at that time was 12,000 taels. The whereabouts of the remaining 8,000 taels are unknown. Steward Liu's expression shifted slightly. There are 5 more similar entries like this, totaling 37,000 taels in falsely reported funds. I closed the ledger and looked at everyone. If you gentlemen are willing to wipe these false accounts clean, all debts can be settled today. If not, she smiled faintly, then let's all go to court together and have the Ministry of Revenue and the Court of Judicial Review thoroughly investigate where exactly this money went. The hall fell deathly silent. Most of these creditors had connections to court officials behind them, so their accounts naturally couldn't withstand close scrutiny. This move of mine was a blatant threat, yet it also struck right at their vital point. Young madam has quite the skills. Steward Liu gritted his teeth. But don't forget the Marquis Manor now. No matter how fallen the Marquis Manor is, it is still nobility. Shen Yunshu cut him off. And my Shen family are imperial merchants. My elder brother is in the Hanlin Academy. If we really want to go down together, I wonder who would drown first. These words landed with resounding force. In the end, the creditors compromised, the false accounts were wiped clean, the real debts settled, and after the Marquis Manor's assets were sold off, there were actually 20,000 taels left over. When the news reached the inner courtyard, Madame Wang wept with joy. But Li Jingshuan smashed his medicine bowl. What does she mean by this? Selling off the family property, that is ancestral property. What right does she have? But she really did pay off the debt. Mrs. Wang rarely spoke up for me, Jingshuan, Yunshu. Perhaps she really is doing this for the good of the Marquis Manor. Good my ass. Li Jingshuan's face contorted. She is digging up the Lai family's roots. The farmland and shops are all gone. What are we supposed to live on from now on? On that meager dowry of hers. Would she even be willing to give it up? These words actually reminded Mrs. Wang. That is right. Shen Yunshu hadn't touched a single cent of her own dowry. And she has been checking the accounts. Li Jingshuan suddenly thought of something. His face instantly turned pale. How much has she found out? Yongsheng Money House, the northern suburb farmland. Those accounts related to Xuanzhen Temple and the northern border. He jumped up abruptly, ignoring the intense pain in his arm. Mother, we can't let her continue investigating. She'll bring ruin upon the whole family. Then what do we do? A vicious glint flashed in Li Jingshuan's eyes. Since she is being heartless, don't blame me for being ruthless. Go tell Qingguo, move up the plan. Outside the window, heavy snow was falling, covering all traces of the conspiracy. Meanwhile, in the study, I was looking at the secret report that had just been delivered. Qingguo had secretly met with a Hu merchant from the northern border last night, trading a box of medicinal herbs. And that Hu merchant was a weapons smuggler wanted by the court 3 years ago. She gently traced the phoenix pattern on the mutton fat jade pendant. The moment when the dagger is revealed was approaching. The 23rd of the 12th lunar month, Little New Year. Chang'an City was decorated with lanterns and festoons, yet the snow fell heavier and heavier. The Marquis Manor was desolate inside, with only a few old servants sweeping the courtyard. In these 3 months, I had restructured the Marquis Manor with an iron fist. Though the Marquis Manor was no longer as prosperous as before, it had finally returned to normal operation. Even Madame Wang had to admit that this daughter-in-law was truly capable. Only Li Jingxuan grew increasingly unhinged. The rot on his arm had spread to his elbow, requiring double doses of snow spirit lotus daily, just to manage the pain. Each month, when Qingguo delivered the medicine, their arguments grew more heated than the last. "You want me to help you transport that shipment?" Li Jingxuan couldn't believe it. "Looking like this, how can I even go outside?" The heir of the Marquis Manor leaving the city to recuperate. What is wrong with that? Qingguo was terrifyingly calm. "Jingxuan, this is the last time. Deliver the goods, and I'll give you half a year's worth of medicine. Enough to last until you find a cure. And if I refuse," Qingguo smiled, her smile ice cold, "then starting next month you can suffer through it yourself. Oh, and the children at Qingguo Villa, it is about time they were brought into the family registry. Tell me if all of the capital learned that the Marquis heir has illegitimate children outside. While the heir's wife who manages the household knows nothing about it, what do you think would happen?" Li Jingxuan trembled all over. Whether from rage or fear, he couldn't tell. In the end, he yielded. On the 25th of the 12th lunar month, Li Jingxuan left the city under the pretense of going to the hot springs to recuperate. In the carriage, besides him, were 6 large wooden crates sealed with medicinal herb labels. I stood under the corridor to see him off, handing him a thick cloak. "May my husband go and return swiftly." Li Jingxuan gave me a long, deep look, his eyes filled with complex emotions. He thought that if there had been no curse, if there had been no Qingguo, perhaps things between them would have been different. But there are no what-ifs in this world. The carriage drove out of the city gate, vanishing into the wind and snow. I turned back to the manor and whispered to Nanny Jiang, "Notify eldest brother, proceed as planned." Half a shikan later, 30 li west of the city, Falling Geese Slope, Li Jingxuan's carriage was intercepted by a group of black-clad riders. The leader was masked. His voice hoarse, "Leave the goods, people can go." The coachman went limp with fear. Li Jingxuan forced himself to stay calm. "Who are you people? This is the carriage of the Marquis Manor's heir." The masked man sneered coldly, splitting open a wooden crate with one slash. Inside weren't medicinal herbs at all, but military-grade crossbows wrapped in oilcloth. The Marquis Manor's heir smuggling military weapons, punishable by death according to the law. The masked man revealed his waist badge. It was actually the Ministry of Justice's arrest division. Li Jingxuan's face turned ashen. At the same time, Xuanzhen Temple was surrounded by soldiers. Qingguo tried to escape through the secret passage, but was captured by Shen family guards, who had long been lying in ambush. What was found in the passage wasn't just gold, silver, and jewels, but also secret letters exchanged with the northern border. Qingguo's villa was also sealed off, and the 2 children were taken away. The servants confessed that Qingguo was actually a spy cultivated by a certain faction in the northern border, who had lurked in Chang'an for years, using the Taoist temple as cover to build a smuggling network 5 years ago during his study travels. Li Jingxuan was seduced by her, sinking into the mire step by step. On the 28th of the 12th lunar month, the imperial edict came down. Li Jingxuan, heir of Marquis Yang'an, colluded with foreign enemies, trafficked military weapons. Evidence is irrefutable. His noble title is stripped, his scholarly honors revoked, execution in 3 days. The Marquis Manor is to be confiscated, female family members consigned to the Court of Entertainment. Qingguo of Xuanzhen Temple, a spy for the enemy nation, guilty of heinous crimes, sentenced to death by 1,000 cuts. In recognition of Shen family daughter, Yungshu's meritorious report, and having managed the household for 3 months with clear accounts and no involvement in the crimes, she is permitted to divorce and return home with her dowry restored. In the front hall of the Marquis' manor, after the eunuch finished reading, Madame Wang fainted on the spot. Li Xinru and Li Xinlin wept bitterly, holding each other. I calmly accepted the divorce papers, bowed and said, "I thank your majesty for this grace." As I walked out of the Marquis Manor gates, The snow stopped. Sunlight pierced through the clouds, shining on the pristine white snow, so bright it made one unable to open their eyes. Nanny Jiang held her hand, tears streaming down her face. "Miss, we're going home." I turned back, taking one last look at the Marquis Manor's plaque. That golden plaque symbolizing glory, Marquis Yong'an Manor, was being taken down by soldiers. 15 years of nightmare, finally over. She turned and stepped onto the carriage. From then on, she was simply Shen Yungshu. The following spring, the Shen family silk workshop launched a new embroidery pattern called Phoenix Returns to the Nest, symbolizing a woman returning to her true self after weathering storms. It became all the rage in Chang'an. I opened a school for women in the south of the city, teaching accounting, embroidery, and the art of household management. Among the students were quite a few daughters of fallen officials, merchant daughters, and even several women redeemed from the Imperial Music Bureau. The Princess Royal personally inscribed the plaque. "A woman's place in this world should be like the cry of a phoenix." On the third day of the third month, the Shangxi Festival, I held a banquet by Kujiang Pool to thank those who had helped me. During the banquet, Princess Royal Yongning asked with a smile, "What are your plans for the future, Yunshu? Will you seek another good match?" I poured wine for the princess, smiling softly. "In this life, Yunshu wishes to travel the world through commerce, to help women through learning, and to not waste this chance at living again." I gazed into the distance. The spring light was just right, peach and plum blossoms, blooming profusely. The lines on my palm were finally carved by my own hand.